Have you ever wondered why? No matter how hard you try, you keep finding yourself in the same situations, same struggles, same setbacks, same story. What if the answer isn't out there, but inside you, hidden in the levels of your own consciousness and the way you think? I believe that by the end of this episode, you'll have the awareness, insight, and a few practical steps to help you break free from the old patterns and step into a new story, the story you created for yourself. Here on this week's episode of Coach's Corner. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I am your host, and as always, I am excited to be here. I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have today because trust me when I tell you that, I've been stewing on this for a minute. So that being said, listen, I want to thank each and every one of you who have elected to join us this evening. You could be any place else, but you elected to be here with us, and I do not. So thank you for being a part of this, this platform. Thank you for sharing it already. And thank you for sharing it. Thank you for hitting that like button, because again, the algorithm likes when people, comment in the comment section. They like when you hit the like button, and they also like it when you share it out on your social media platform. So I invite each and every one of you to do just that. As we get ready to dive into this amazing conversation. And this conversation here is all about, being trapped in a reality loop. Now, I get it. Some of you have seen the movie Matrix, and it seems as though when you go look at the movie Matrix, it talks about that, reality loop. They call it the program, to where you get stuck in a cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. Not only being stuck in a cycle of doing the same thing over and over again, but being programmed for the cycle that you're in. Now, that kind of brings something to your awareness, or at least it should, because in all actuality, we have to come to a realization of something. And that's something that we need to come to the realization of. It is a truth. And that truth is most of us aren't stuck because we lack willpower or intelligence. Don't ever confuse the two, right? Doing more of the same thing gets you the exact same result. It might just get you more of the exact same result. And, being intellectual about the thing that I am doing only makes me smart about the thing that I'm doing. So willpower and intelligence is not the thing, right? We're caught in a reality loop where our thoughts, our beliefs, and emotions are quietly shaping our lives and putting it on autopilot. And if you think about it, some of us drive the same way to work. We do the same rituals when we wake up in the morning. We probably practice the same routine. Wake up, grab your phone, check social media. If you got to go to work, get up, go take a shower, do your hair, whatever that looks like. And then grab a semblance of breakfast if you are a breakfast person before you go out the door. And then you drive the same route to work. And you probably park in the exact same parking space. You probably do the exact same thing when you walk into your job. Whatever that looks like. And if we think about it, we can all agree that that's the thing. But I also believe that we don't realize what's working in the background, because our mind is wired to repeat what feels familiar. And I'm sure all of you at some particular point in time, to where you're doing a thing and it just didn't feel right. Not that it was wrong, it just didn't feel right. Well, that right, the difference between right and wrong is not ideally what is right or what is wrong. It's what's familiar versus what is unfamiliar. And even it doesn't really matter the thing that we're talking about here because it's just the familiarity of the thing and whether that thing either serves you or don't serve you. That part doesn't matter, right? It's just the familiar versus the unfamiliar. But I want everybody to understand that that this does not mean the world is coming to an end. This does not mean that your life is at a standstill. No, I want you to understand that first and foremost, that awareness is the first step to freedom, and that's what this show serves as. It serves as your awareness to breaking free of the reality loop that you find yourself in. Now, that being said, what is a reality loop? And I'm sure some person out there has already looked it up and Googled it. And if you have, kudos to you. But I'll also say if you did all that, that means you weren't paying attention. But yeah, kudos to you. But here is the answer. The answer I'm gonna have scrolling on the screen as I tend to talk about it, because again, it is a cycle. It is a cycle where your subconscious beliefs, thoughts, and emotions create the same patterns in your life. And it's created over and over again. It's cyclical, right? Often without you even having any type of awareness about it. Now, neuroscience indicates that 85 to 95% of our actions are driven by our subconscious programming and habit loops, if you will. Your brain, through neuroplasticity, strengthens these patterns each time we repeat them, making them feel automatic and hard to break. Spiritually, you have thought leaders like Neville Goddard out there, and you have Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is awesome, by the way. He teaches, they teach that your inner state, your consciousness, it creates your outer world. Until you become aware of these loops, you will keep reliving the same story, no matter how much you want to change it. Now, I want us to go a little bit deeper into this whole notion of thought loops, because I want us to kind of take the notion of thought loops, everything that we talked about so far. I want us to take that notion and break it down into a practicality. What I've done is I've actually created, and I just leave that scrolling. So as you guys are reading it, I take it down short. I say it that way. So break it down into a more practical means. And I have it broken down into three categories. I have a simple, I have negative, and then we also have advanced reality loops. So first and foremost is simple reality loops. And simple reality loops is broken down into two categories here. And so first and foremost, we're going to talk about what is known as habit loops. Now, what is a habit loop? A habit loop is, in essence, an automatic routines, like hitting the snooze button when we wake up in the morning, or reaching for your cell phone first thing, or always needing coffee to quote unquote wake up. You guys experience that. Either you did it or you know somebody who does it, right? They need that coffee before their morning gets started. But how does that actually work? So there's three parts to this. There's a trigger, there's a routine, and there's a reward, right? I say it again. There's a trigger, there's a routine, and there's a reward. And regardless of each one of those things you look at, you can clearly see the trigger, you can see the routine, and you can get the reward from it. Whether we're talking about hitting the snooze button, whether we're talking about grabbing your phone when you first wake up, or whether we're talking about needing that morning cup of joe. But it doesn't just end itself there. You can think of any other habit that you may have and consider what is the trigger, what is the routine, and then what is the reward that you get from it. And this is difficult to break because those habits, like we talked about previously, they run on autopilot. And that autopilot is happening in your subconscious mindset, which is below your conscious level of awareness, where when we look at it, our willpower alone rarely works. I'll say it again. Willpower alone rarely works. So when you look at the thing that you need to do to change whatever it is that you're doing consistently, applying effort to it is not going to be the way to do it. So what do we need to understand moving forward? We are what we repeatedly do. Now let that sink in for a second. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. I'm sorry, I got to get more on the screen, right? Excellence then is not an act, it's a habit. And Aristotle said that. Now, I want you guys to consider something as it pertains to this. And we're talking about the habit loop. What's one small habit you repeat daily that no longer serves you? And what new habit could you try instead? Is it that, you want to change from drinking coffee every morning, right? Is that the habit that you want to change? What about hitting the snooze button? Let me talk about me for a second, because I used to be a snoozer. I said it. I used to be a snoozer. I used to hit the snooze button. What I started doing is, and this was back in my army days, in order to prevent from hitting the snooze button, I would take my alarm clock and put it all the way on the other side of the room. So in order for me to turn it off, I had to get out the bed and hit and turn the alarm off. That way now I'm already up. So therefore I do not have to worry about snoozing and falling back, going back to sleep and potentially being late. So that's just an example of what we're talking about here. Like what's one new routine you could try instead of hitting that snooze button? Now, let's move on and talk about the negative self-talk loop. I know some people are already anxious about this one. And so, what is the negative self talk loop? It itself is the inner critic that says, I'm not good enough. I always mess up. Nothing ever works out for me. Now, this is key. In fact, people who know me, they know that I am a person that will correct the thing that you say that is negative for you. In fact, I have a philosophy. I will not allow anybody to talk negatively about my friends. And if I consider you to be a friend, I won't even allow you to talk negatively about yourself. So, how does this form? Well, we have these repetitive negative thoughts, which ultimately create an emotional state. And then that emotional state reinforces more negative thoughts. And then itself becomes like a self licking ice cream cone. It just keeps feeding itself over and over and over again. And I can't tell you why we do it. Maybe it's something that we learned from someplace else, right? It's like saying, well, good things never work out for me. And sure, based upon what you've observed in your own life, that may be true to a certain degree. There is some truth to that. I'll say it that way. But maybe the flaw in that is your perspective where you say never, right? Maybe it's not that things never work out for me. Maybe it's just that the things that I want to work in my favor are not necessarily working in my favor, and I need to understand why. So negative self-talk becomes very difficult to break because these are deeply ingrained in neural pathways, right? Going back to what we talked about previously, based upon neuroplasticity, the more I practice the thing, the more thicker the neural pathway becomes. The more thicker the neural pathway becomes, the harder it is to break. And a lot of those negative thought loops, a lot of those were actually created in our childhood. So now you go all the way back and consider how many years I've been saying these negative things about myself. And the more years I've been saying these things, well, the more difficult it becomes to break. Now, what we have to keep in mind and remember ultimately is that the mind itself is everything. What you think, you become. Let that set in for a second. Again, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Now, ideally, in your mind, you're automatically thinking, well, if that is true, only thing I need to do is change what I think. Yeah, but go back and remember what I just said about how thick those neural pathways are that you've been practicing over all these years. So, if you spoke to yourself like you would a dear friend, how might your inner world begin to change? I want you to think about that. Because a lot of times what I've observed is that some people give others advice that they themselves don't even take. Yes. Sometimes we give friends better advice than we give ourselves. So, what if I was to give myself the same advice that I would give a dear friend, somebody that I really, really care about, somebody I really want to help, and I really want the best for them? Not just saying I want the best for them, because a lot of times we get caught in relationships. Like I talk about that moving forward as well, right? We find ourselves in relationships where people say, "I just want what's best for you," but yet, there's no evidence of that. It's just a good conversation. So, if you spoke to yourself like you would a dear friend, how might your inner world begin to work? Okay. Now, those are the two simple reality loops. So now let's kind of transition and jump into the immediate reality loop. You guys are getting a lot up front today, right? So I know some of you are trying to write shorthand, whatever the case may be. It might be too much. You may have to come back and listen to the replay, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with listening to these replays 2 and 3 times so that you can actually capture the notes. But don't just take notes, right? Take notes and do something with the notes. And I will attempt to remember to see how to put notes in practice, because I think that's important. So the intermediate reality loops are broken down into two categories themselves. And the first one is relationship pattern loops. Now, this is key. This is huge. And I know that this is going to resonate with a lot of people. And for those people who this resonate with you up front, my heart goes out to you because I used to be one of those people. Now, what is it? It is repeating the same conflicts, attracting similar partners, or feeling stuck in codependency. Now, just the notion of codependency by itself is a whole topic of discussion, right? We create relationships with people to where we have a need for them to fulfill a missing part of me. So if I have an insecurity, I need you to make me feel secure in my insecurity. And then that creates a dependency loop between you and I. In order for me to feel good about myself, I need you to help me with that. And so that now creates this codependency. And that's not just the only one. There are several, but I just like to use that one as an example because that is very easy to understand. But you yourself, you can consider several different arenas where codependency exists. Now, this one forms through unconscious beliefs and emotional triggers, often rooted in early family dynamics. So if I seen certain things growing up, I either believe that those are the things that I need to repeat, or I am totally against that. And a lot of times I try to pattern my life so that I don't do those things. And then I find myself actually doing those things. So that's the thing. And the issue is that it drives repeated behavior. So I can't be in a relationship. Let me put this disclaimer out there. It doesn't matter how bad the relationship you found yourself in at any given point in time. That relationship served as a training ground or a platform of learning for you. But if you failed to learn the thing that you needed to learn about yourself, then what's going to end up happening is that you're going to the next relationship behaving the exact same way. And the issue here is that the assumption that drives that is that that person was 100% at fault behind the fact that this relationship fails. Now, I get it. I get it. It may have been bad. In fact, they may have been, and for those of you who are in Bible study, you heard me say this past week, they may have been 99% responsible for the outcome of this relationship. But if I am 1% responsible, that 1% is my responsibility. And I need to own it. I need to learn from it and I need to grow from it because if not, I carry that 1% into my next situation. Now, I'm sure somebody out there disagrees, and I'm okay with that, really. But don't just disagree. Make sure that you articulate why. Okay. Now, why is this hard to break? Because we have emotional investments in the thing that we're in. And sometimes we be in certain situations for so long that it kind of puts in our mind, like, I don't want to start over. I don't want to go back out there and contribute in this dating game that I'm observing on social media. And I think that what I see on social media is the dating game itself. But I will offer you to consider this. Is it possible that what you see on social media is just the script, the play, and the performance that people are putting on for social media, as opposed to it being the dating game itself? Now, this is not me telling you to go out and date. This is just me offering you something different to think about. The reason why a lot of us stay in these relationships when it's obvious that either myself present behavior that does not say I want to be in a relationship, or that person presents behavior that does not say they want to be in a relationship, is because, again, those emotional investments, emotional triggers we kind of set with them as well, right? And again, all of this comes through family dynamics, right? We've seen it, we've experienced it. But those things, they mutually reinforce these loops to make them feel normal. Have you ever, I'll say it like this, have you ever met someone who was in a abusive relationship? Physical, that's what I'm making reference to. A physically abusive relationship. And they themselves will make excuses for the other person. And don't just limit it at physical abuse. Let's go mental abuse. Let's go psychological abuse as well. They themselves make excuses for the other person because they themselves have told themselves that this is normal. And it's normal for them because they've probably seen it growing up. It's normal for them because they've been in it for so long. It's normal for them because, well, in their mind, they don't want to go back out there and start again. But I like what Carl Jung has said, because this is probably by far one of my most favorite sayings. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, think about that one for a second. How much of your life right now, currently, and I'm not just talking relationship patterns, right? How much of your life right now, currently, that you have settled in and you call it fate? It is what it is, just how things are, right? So it's important for us to consider one recurring relationship pattern you notice, and also consider what new response could you try the next time. Maybe the relationship pattern that you notice is that, well, you do more talking and less listening. That might be the pattern that you notice. You feel subconsciously that something says that I have to talk, 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 right? Well, what would happen if I listened more than I talk and I responded for the sake of adding value as opposed to just having something to say? What would happen if in my interactions with my significant other, my goal is to be that individual that they can depend on, not necessarily saying that there's a need for them to depend on me, right? So if that person would call me in need, that's the key, in need. They've exhausted all resources, all other available options that they had at their disposal. And I'm like that person that they call next. I need some help. So now, okay, cool. Because now within the space of this relationship, you have now exercised personal responsibility and now you're reaching out for help. Because trust and believe, sometimes we get in relationship and we kind of play the part that we believe that we're supposed to play in relationship, like the damsel in distress. Right. I mean, I get it. It was cute when we were growing up, but as mature adults, yeah, no one's in distress. We have to come to that realization. You're not in distress. You might be in a space to where you have to think a little bit. That space might be there to challenge you right now so that you can grow beyond the current level of awareness. And I think a lot of times when we pattern our lives as that person that needs help all the time, well, that could be problematic. Okay. So the next one would be what we call the financial mindset loop. Now, this one is rather interesting. I want you guys to pay close attention as we talk about the financial mindset loop, because I really do wholeheartedly at my core believe all of this. And I think sometimes because we're in this loop, we don't we exercise a fear, and that fear prevents us from doing anything outside of it, because at the end of the day we're concerned about what someone will say or what someone will think. So the financial mindset loop is all about patterns like always struggling with money, overspending, or feeling undeserving of abundance. Now, always struggling with money, that's a mindset belief. Overspending, another mindset. Or feeling undeserving of abundance, mindset. So all of this is a mindset. Like, I can't stress this piece enough. The financial mindset loop is all about the mindset because I have created this as my reality. So I have to go back and understand something. So let's just kind of, make this make sense, just like we did everything else, right? It forms based upon subconscious beliefs that we have about money. Now, some of it is inherited through our family or culture, and a lot of it drives behavior and outcome. But I don't want to just limit it there, because it's not just family and culture, it could also be inherited through the things that we take in. Pay close attention to some of the things that we are looking at and observing, and I give you a genre of movies that are, I mean, it is so strategic, it's not even funny. Go look at superhero movies, right? Some of the best superheroes, they're not rich. They don't have a lot of money, right? Superman don't have a lot of money. Um, you know, Green Lantern, all of those superheroes, they don't have a lot of money. But what about the ones that do have a lot of money? Something's wrong with them. Batman, he has a lot of money. He is borderline psychotic. Let's look at Iron Man. Iron Man, a billionaire, but narcissist. Like, it's not by happenstance, I believe, that these things are working right on the backside. So, quote, the hero is not supposed to be a person that has a lot of money. In fact, if you pay close attention to it, the hero is really I mean, I'm sorry, not the hero, but the villain is really, in most cases, the millionaire. Think about it. Lex Luthor. Lex was a millionaire. They think about it. Like it wasn't really portrayed as the Joker having a lot of money, but the Joker, I mean, let's be honest. How do you think he got all the stuff that he got? Like he goes in and out of an asylum and then comes out, breaks out. And I mean, I got it. You know, he robbed banks and all kind of stuff like that. So just kind of think about that. Think about some of the things that work behind the scenes, the big screen, the programs that we watch, TV programs, movie programs. Let's think about those things and how it actually is positioning the notion of having money per se and how it works against us in our mind. So I think that will help. That will start to make you aware of some things. So why is this one hard to break? Well, because the subconscious mind, like I said, clings to the familiar belief that is, even if it causes me to struggle. So I get more focused on the circumstance and not necessarily the belief that created the circumstance. So now when I get more caught up on the circumstance and not the belief of the circumstance, I actually look at struggling with money as a thing of, I don't know, people who look like me, people who come from our culture. Yeah. Overspending, well, prices are too high. Gas is too high right now, right? That's too expensive. See, that's another thing. The words that come out of our mouth also is a reflection of what we really and truly believe. Gas is too expensive, but you're still gonna get gas, right? Feeling undeserving of abundance. And so our notion of abundance pattern, right? Our narrative of abundance now works against my belief system of abundance. And now abundance have a limitation. Well, why do we believe abundance have a limitation when there was nothing that told us that abundance have a limitation? Because I think the limitation is for me, for a person who looks like me, from a person who came from where I came from a person who's been through the things that I've been through. And then I get to the point that I just don't deserve it. But if we change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. This kind of goes back to what we talk about, right? Concept, identity, esteem, right? Posture and esteem. So when I can change my concept, I change my identity. When I change my identity, I change my posture. When I change my posture, now I change my esteem. I express myself differently. So these things line up perfectly with the things that we talk about. Only thing you have to do is put them into practice. And if you struggle, put them into practice. That's where people like me come in at. Because again, we have to realize it's very difficult for me to come up with the solution to the problem that I created. So what is one belief about money you inherited? And how might your life shift if you choose a new belief? This is important for us to ask ourselves these very difficult questions. Okay. Again, what's one belief about money you inherited? And how might your life shift if you choose a new belief? Now, we've been in hyperdrive, and this train is not going to slow down because I think as we start to peel these layers back, it helps us to understand this notion of reality. And so now it's time to jump into the advanced reality loops. And I'm telling you, you guys are going to resonate with these as well. So now we have those trauma-based identity loops. What is a trauma-based identity loop? Well, they are deep-seated patterns like self-sabotage, chronic anxiety, or reliving past traumas. Now, I know somebody is like, well, that's still not clear. Okay, so let's say it like this. Imagine a traumatic experience that you've been through, right? Whether that traumatic experience took place in a relationship, whether that traumatic experience took place in a war zone, whatever that looks like. And that traumatic experience creates this powerful emotional response or these powerful emotional memories, if we'll say. And then that becomes a facet of your encoding, right? That is in you, in your mind, in your body. And ultimately, it triggers automatic reactions. Think about people who have PTSD, right? People who have PTSD, regardless of where it came from, whether they've seen a traumatic accident, whether they was in a war zone or whatever that looks like, whether they've been a part of a traumatic experience, And okay, let's do this one. Consider a person who's been a victim of domestic abuse. If you're around that person and you make any sudden moves, they jump, they flinch. Why? Because that's familiar to them. Their body has a natural reaction to it because they've experienced it before. And so these are very difficult to break because these loops, if you will, are deeply embedded, often below conscious awareness, and can be reactivated by subtle clues. I say it again, subtle clues, subtle cues. That's it. Those things now tend to recycle that previously experienced reaction that they had from it. Now, I kind of gave this a second ago, but I'm going to give it again because I think it's important. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Not one, none, zero. This is important because this notion alone should erase the concept of I can do it myself, or I got time to do it, or well, once I do this, then I can. Mm. So what we're doing in that regard is we're putting my progression on hold based upon a circumstance. So the circumstance, what I'm really saying is the circumstance is more important than my future. And once I deal with the circumstance, mom, then I can, go back and pick up my future. Well, here, let me ask this question because I really want you to think into this. What if my circumstance is because of my present level of awareness? And if I focus more on my future, then my future can help me to create a new circumstance. To I no longer have to put my future on hold for the sake of my circumstance. I put my future as a priority because my future now creates a brand new circumstance. So if your pain could speak, whatever traumatic events you've been through, whatever thing that causes you that automatic cue response, if it could speak, what would it ask you to notice or even heal today? Right? Let that sink in. If it could speak, whatever traumatic event you've been through, I don't care what it is, if it could speak to you, what would it ask you to notice or heal today? Yeah. Okay, let's move on because we still got a lot of stuff to cover. Next is our collective cultural conscious loop. I smile at this one because this is a big one. Okay. In essence, it is generational trauma, societal beliefs, or cultural narratives that shape group identity and behavior. People like us never get ahead. You guys are familiar with this because I remember when I was growing up, a lot of the things I used to hear is that, the man is holding me down, right? That was a cultural thing, right? Everybody I knew was saying that, and that became their reasoning for not XYZ, right? It's not that the thing that they were talking about wasn't real, but the problem is that they made it real to them. I'll say it again. It's not that the thing that they were talking about wasn't real, but the issue is that they made it real to them. So at some point, I may need to consider divorcing that thing because make no mistake about it. What is generational trauma? Well, generational trauma is the trauma that I experienced in one generation and it is passed down through generation to generation. Well, how's it passed down? Well, the automatic response that most people come up with, and they're not wrong by saying this, is that it's taught. So we teach trauma. That's one thing. But it is also generational trauma is encoded in your DNA and you don't necessarily realize it. So the traumatic events that an elder may have gone through, it has changed them to a certain degree internally. And therefore, when their child is born, it becomes part of their encoding. It's almost like I'm going out on a limb for those of you who are familiar with the Superman, movie. Well, one of the things about Superman is that he had the codex embedded in him. It was dispersed in his DNA, right? And I hate to say it that way. That's really kind of very similar to what we're talking about here. Generational trauma can actually be encoded in your DNA and you don't really know it, but it is lessons from generation to generation. That's why when you find the younger generation, they're not necessarily moved by the things that the older generation moved by because they're so far removed from that traumatic event. Sure, it's still important to them, right? But it's, again, it's not as important as it was to their ancestors, if you will. Societal beliefs, cultural narratives, again, I think that kind of goes without saying. Societal beliefs change, as time progresses. And so, what is the current belief system that we're working under? I think we have to consider that. How does that affect my thinking, my receptivity, my reactivity to life, right? Cultural narratives, again, there are some cultural narratives that I think are phenomenal, but I think there are some cultural narratives that I think are debilitating. And so what we have to do is discover the ones that work for us, right? And again, going back to just like everything else, how does it form? Traumatic experiences create powerful emotional memories that become encoded in the body and in the mind, triggering automatic reactions. Okay. And these are difficult loops, right? Because they're deeply embedded, right? At the subconscious level and can be reactivated by subtle cues. Yeah. But again, just like that, these loops also form kind of like a group identity. And so the group identity now gives us a place to nestle down in, and it makes us feel comfortable in it. It's almost like an affinity. For those of you who remember the podcast on affinity bias, go back and look at it. Right now, we create an affinity within that group, and it's maintained by and it is. I'm sorry, and it is maintained by social pressure. So when you, it's almost like when you try to remove yourself and change your identity and do something different, that group looks at you kind of like a sellout, somebody who forgot where they came from and things of that nature. And here's the reality of the truth: none of that is real. It's just the narrative that they're making about you to make you feel guilty about leaving them and they want you to come back. So kind of let that sink in for a second. Now, I'll show you this one. Your beliefs are not you. Rather, your beliefs possess you. I'll say again, your beliefs are not you, but your beliefs possess you. So now when you think about it from that narrative, from that perspective, it changes everything. It should change everything. It should change a lot. But the question is whether or not you will allow that change to change you or whether or not it's just a good talking point. Sounds good in the moment, right? So for me, I have to look at this. What's one belief or pattern you inherited from your family or culture? And what new legacy do you want to create? Here's one. I give you one because the word legacy is in, and I think it's important. How about be the first generation that leaves an inheritance for its children? How about break the cycle of what we believe finances is all about because that's what is taught, right? And you've worked diligently to do what is taught. But then when you think about it, like what I've accumulated at this point in my at this stage in my life won't stretch to my children's children. So what does that mean? That means that you will, and I hate to say it this way, y'all don't judge me. You will rob your children so that you can give it to your children's children. But what if your parents did not have something set aside for your children? So kind of let that sink in again. So just think about it. What's one belief or pattern you inherited from family or culture, right? From your family or culture. And then you can come up with what new legacy do you want to create if you want to change that legacy, that inheritance. I'm not saying that all of them are bad, right? All of them aren't bad, but all of them aren't good either. Okay. And that brings us to probably my favorite, which is spiritual bypassing an ego-based enlightenment loop. Now, what is this? This is using spiritual ideas to avoid personal growth. If I just stay positive, I need to face my pain. Or feeling superior because of spiritual progress. Or should I say it like this? Because of perceived spiritual progress. Yeah, because of perceived, not necessarily spiritual progress, but perceived spiritual progress. And how does it form? Well, the ego co-opts spiritual growth to avoid, I'll say it again, to avoid discomfort or inflate self-importance. And I think we see that a lot over time. We've seen that a lot over the years, over the past few years, really. Okay. And this is hard to break because these loops make us feel good. Yeah, these loops make us feel good. and can be mistaken for true growth, but they block deeper healing. Now, imagine what that would look like if you can if imagine what that looks like if you can divorce the ego that is keeping you where you are, and then trying to add something to it. This is why I keep saying, and I keep stressing this: you got to pull the weeds out your garden. You just can't lay, new information on top of those weeds and think it's going to choke the weeds out. It don't work that way. Weeds are resilient, man. Ask anybody who grows a garden. Weeds are resilient, and so are the weeds that are in your life. You got to pull them out. You got to do it. Okay. Um, here's one I want everybody to process real quick. Spiritual egotism, where one takes great pride in one's humility. Paradoxically, a person may even fall into the trap of spiritual egotism. I say it again. Spiritual egotism is where one takes great pride in one's humility. Paradoxically, that person may even fall into the trap of spiritual egotism. And if you would like, I really would like to talk about this more in depth in Bible study because I think it's important. We have to be consciously aware that we are exercising these principles, these spiritual principles, biblical principles, through the proper lens. I say it again. We have to be consciously aware that we're exercising these spiritual, biblical principles through the proper lens. You change the lens of it, you change the projection of it. It's just that simple. Okay. So, you be using positivity or spiritual ideas to avoid facing something real within you. I'm gonna take me a drink on that one. Let y'all process this. Where might you be using positivity or spiritual ideas to avoid facing something real within yourself? Listen, don't get it twisted. These questions have to be for me as well. I have to make sure that I hold myself to the same level of responsibility that I actually hold people to when I get into our sessions, our coaching sessions, our conversations, things of that nature. I wouldn't coach a person on a thing I didn't believe. So if I'm not already practicing this, I promise you, I wouldn't even talk about it. So where might you be using positivity or spiritual ideas to avoid facing something real within yourself? I give you a great one. Not the answer for you. No, that's not what I'm saying. I give you something to consider because I've heard it time and time again. Well, other people say I'm changing, but you're talking to another person. Said in. Other people are saying that I'm changing, but you're talking to someone and they're asking you a question directly about you, directly about this current behavior that you haven't displayed for a very long time. Do you think they're asking you that question to damage you, to hurt you, to back you in the corner and make you fight? So what was the other people are saying I'm changing? Is it possible that the other people that say that you're changing don't spend enough time with you to be able to determine whether or not there is a change? Just something to consider. Now, I think all of these, right? All of these reality loops, if you will, all of these, like it should reveal something to us. Again, we have simple reality loops, we have intermediate reality loops, and again, we have advanced reality loops. And I think we can see ourselves in every last one of them. But here is the issue that I believe that we all run into a lot of times when it comes down to it, right? We struggle with being able to being able to discern reality. I think that's a lot of times what we do. And I think we struggle with reality because we're stuck in realism. And so we have to understand the difference between reality versus realism. So what does that look like? I think it's important for us to realize that when it comes down to reality, reality itself is the totality of what exists. Everything that is, whether you see it, believe it, or understand it. In philosophy, reality is the what is, the actual state of affairs, the independent of your thoughts, feelings, or beliefs. Listen, I can't tell you how many times when talking with certain people, all they want to do is talk about their experience, how they feel, things of that nature. I think it's important that we get to the point of understanding the difference between reality and realism. Like it's like the first step of breaking free from old patterns and consciously creating a new life. So, as when it comes to reality, a simple way of looking at reality is what's actually happening right now inside me and outside me. Okay. And then that takes us to unpack, and we'll talk about some examples of this as well. That takes me to unpack what is realism. Now, realism by itself is a belief or philosophical position about reality. It's the stance that reality exists independently of my mind, language, or perceptions. And a simple way of looking at this is that realism is the belief that things are real, whether or not you believe in them. Now, I got it. That may kind of, challenge some people when it comes down to it. So let's kind of make it make sense because I think it you have to find the connection, right? So we have to get to the point of understand why it really and truly matters. You're not stuck in my beliefs. You're not stuck because of reality itself. You are stuck because of your belief about reality. It's not that the man doesn't exist. It's that my perception that the man is targeting me might be flawed. Or let's just be honest, he might be targeting people like me, but he is not targeting me specifically. So we have to realize that reality loops are cycles where your belief and emotions create the same experiences over and over again. So is it creating the experience because of reality or because of how I experience reality? So when you see that your realism, which is your beliefs and what's possible, is shaping your reality, you now gain the power to question, shift, and create something new. So as you get to the point of elevating your consciousness, your perception of reality becomes less about the old stories that you used to tell yourself, right? And more about truth, freedom, and possibility. And I think this now helps to like change everything within you. Just that alone should be liberating. Just that alone should be something that you can like just resonate with. So before I go any further, I want you guys to pause for a second and I want you to put in the comment section, right? Based upon everything we talked about, because I think we kind of got after this really good. Based upon simple reality loops, which is the habit loop, right? The negative self talk loop, based upon intermediate reality loops, which is the relationship pattern loop, which is the financial mindset loop, based upon the advanced reality loop, which includes the trauma based identity loop, the collective cultural consciousness loop, and the spiritual bypassing and ego based enlightenment loop. I want you guys to tell me in the comment section which one resonates with you. Okay. I'll go over them again real quick. Okay. During the simple reality loops, right? You have the habit and you have the negative self-talk. For intermediate reality loops, you have relationship, you have financial mindset, and then under the advanced reality loop, you have the trauma-based identity, you have the collective cultural consciousness, and you also have spiritual bypassing and ego-based enlightenment loops. Now, as you put that in there, I also want you to consider this. When it comes down to those loops, what is reality and what is realism for you? For that loop to exist in you, what is reality? What is realism? Okay, for you. And then after doing so, I want you to change the realism of the reality. This is, y'all know, listen, this is blue. I don't care what y'all say. This is blue. I know I'm colorblind, but this is actually blue. Okay. So This cup, just want to show you how to D. This cup, this cup is blue. That's reality. How do I feel about blue? That's realism, right? What does the blue do inside of me, right? How does it make me feel? How do I connect with blue? Why is blue such an important? What happens when blue and silver comes together for me, right? Does it remind me of my old high school football team when I was growing up? It's like those things. Okay. So consider reality, realism, change realism. And now you get to the point to where now we get to something more profound. Okay. Before we go, because man, we're getting close. This might be a part two, y'all. Let's be honest with you. I want to share something with you because I promised you some tools. And I want these tools to, no, we should be good. I want these tools to kind of set in and resonate with you. And I want to go through them. And I may go through them a little quick because of the time, but I think we'll be fine. Okay. So, what I want to share with you is called Feynman's 7 Levels to Unlock Genius Mindset. Now, here's what I want you guys to understand. The 7 levels to unlock a genius mindset isn't a system Richard Feynman wrote down. It's a modern framework inspired by his way of learning and thinking. So Feynman approach teaches us, and I want to kind of put it out here so you can see. Feynman approach teaches us. Hold on, there we go. Feynman approach teaches us that genius isn't about being born special. It's about how you approach problems, ask questions, and keep learning. Everybody got that? It's not about being born special. It's about how you approach problems, ask questions, and keep learning. Now, Feynman said something that I think is important for everybody to understand. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself. And here's the interesting part about it. You are the easiest person to fool. Yep, that's key. You are the easiest person to fool. And the first principle is that you should not fool yourself, that you cannot fool yourself. So now I want to throw this question out here before we move on to these 7 principles. What is the underlying assumption you may possess in the different areas of your life that if you did question may reveal something you never considered? I think this is a good question for everybody to answer. What is the underlying assumption you may possess in different areas of your life that if you did question may reveal something you never considered? Okay. Now, as you are screen capturing, writing down, that's a lot to write down too, by the way. Screen capturing, writing this question down, I want us to kind of dive into these 7 principles because I want to give you these 7 levels, but I also want to give you what it means and how to use it. Okay. So the first one is curiosity. Curiosity and asking questions. Okay. I think we must start with genuine curiosity when it comes down to these. I don't believe the genuine part happens all the time, but I think we must start with genuine curiosity. That's what this really means. And so ask why and how about the things you don't understand instead of trying to chat GPT it and let chat GPT give you the answer and then read directly from chat GPT as though you already knew the answer. Well, if you do that, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to learn. Sure, you can read, everybody knows that, but reading it does nothing for you in the space of progression. So ask why and how about the things you don't understand, and you do that through curiosity and a genuine curiosity and asking questions. Number 2, observation and direct experience. Now, we learn by seeing and doing. I say it again. We learn by seeing and do. Sound like a scripture. These things you've seen me do, you would do and do. Okay, got it. So we learn by seeing and doing. So we try the thing for ourselves. Don't just take someone else's word for it, right? Let someone else's word be the reason why you go try the thing is also, right? Now, moving forward, number 3 puts us into simplification in teaching. Okay, now what does that really mean? Explain things simply. Listen, I understand you guys are smart. You got degrees. You got more degrees than a thermometer. We got that. But I don't necessarily have to use 5-syllable words to show you how smart I am. In fact, that works in reverse, actually. I don't know if you know that. The way that you know a thing, or the way that you can understand whether or not you know a thing, is that you can explain the thing at the level to which a seventh grader can understand it. If I can explain it at the level to which a seventh grader can understand what I'm saying, that is now evidence that I know. So now I have to explain it simply for the seventh grader to understand it. So how do I do that? I teach what I learn to someone else, or even to myself. I give you a perfect example. Before I do any webinar or whatever that looks like, I teach it to myself first. I have to practice, I have to rehearse it. I ask myself questions about it while I'm doing it, right? Is that simple enough, or do I need to break that down any further? Right? Do I believe I got after the true intent of what I wanted to do, wanted in the beginning? Will the audience get something from it? That's my first question, to be honest with you. Will they get something from this that is tangible, that is usable for them, right, and beneficial to them? Okay. Now, one of my favorite is challenging assumptions. Okay. What do I mean by that? I need to question what I think I know. I'll say it again. Question what I think I know. I look for the evidence that could prove me wrong, not prove me right. Listen, if you heard what I just said, that will literally destroy every debate about the Bible, every debate about whatever the debate is about. I look for evidence that proves me wrong, not prove me right. Because if I'm looking for evidence to prove me right, somebody put in the comment section what that means. What is the definition of looking for the thing to prove me right? Right? I'm gonna move forward and see if anybody put that in the comment section, because that's key. When I look for evidence to prove me right, that is a thing. It is called a thing. You guys already know it. I know you know it. I got faith in you. Okay. Number 5 is all about embracing uncertainty. Okay. What does it mean to embrace uncertainty? Be okay with not knowing. Hmm. That really goes outside of what we see in today's society, because today's society is all about proving how smart you are. But be okay with not knowing. I don't know is a complete sentence, because now you have the opportunity to learn. Don't position yourself to where you are portraying to be the smartest person in the room, and you're not. I was about to say more, but I don't want y'all to get mad at me. Yeah, don't position yourself to, like, as though you're the smartest person in the room when you're not. You're not the smartest person in the room. Don't put on a facade as though you are, because if anybody ever decide to put you to the test, not necessarily testing to see how smart you are, but to talk to you on a level of your portrayed intellect, then you're about to embarrass yourself. So don't do that, right? So be okay with not knowing. Admit when you don't know and stay open to learning. That's key. Okay. Um, Next is iterative learning. Okay. And this is pretty self-explanatory at this point. Keep testing and refining. Keep testing and refining, right? Because when we review, when we practice and improve your understanding over time, then what you'll find is that your understanding continues to elevate. That's iterative. So the level in which I learn becomes the starting point in which I continue to learn. So it continues to grow, right? Through continual cycles of doing the thing, right? And last but not least is mastery through practice. Okay. I get it. I get it. In this fast paced, information dominant society, we think the more we know, the better we are. But the question I always ask is that, okay, well, if it's all about just stockpiling stuff, then what do you master? What do you become a master of? And that's the key. Okay. So those are the 7 levels revealed, right? And the 7 levels are: number 1, curiosity and asking questions. Number 2, observation and direct experience. Number 3 is simplification and teaching. Number 4 is challenging assumptions. Number 5 is embracing uncertainty. Number 6 is iterative learning. And number 7 is mastery through practice. Now, I know somebody by now has put the answer to the question that I asked earlier. And that answer to that, the question, when I go and look for the information to prove me right, that is, oh man, I'm drawing a blank. It is, it's a bias. What is it? Consistency bias? Yeah, I think it's consistency bias. I might be wrong. It might be consistency bias. I might be because I have a lot of biases running through my head. But yes, I am looking for the thing to prove that I'm right. So I don't go in it looking for the evidence of the exact truth as it is, reality. I go in it and I'm only looking for the thing to prove that I'm right, right? So that's it. So that said, I hope you guys found value in this conversation. Please put in the comment section. Let me know if you found value in this conversation. Also, let me know how you're going to use this. How are you going to use what you've learned today about reality loop? Okay. How are you going to use the information that you learned? How many times are you going to look at this video? That's really an important question. How many times are you going to look at this? Because I don't care. Like, again, just this alone is iterative, right? What you've learned today would get you to a certain level. You look at it again, what you learned that day gets you to another level, right? So do that so that you can get a good understanding of the simple reality loops, get to a good understanding of the negative self-talk loops, right? Get a good understanding of the relationship pattern loop and the financial mindset loop. And you know, these right here, the trauma-based identity loop, the collective cultural conscious loop, and then my favorite, spiritual bypass and ego-based enlightenment group. Look, this one right here, I promise you, if you pay close attention to this, I think you'll get a whole lot out of them. And then last but not least, do not bypass this. Reality versus realism. I think just that conversation alone will enlighten us and grow us to a whole nother level. So that being said, again, I hope you guys found great value in this conversation. I look forward to reading all your comments. And again, share it with somebody else. Share it with somebody who you think will find value in this conversation. Listen, share it with your kids, your adult kids, right? Imagine how much further in life you would have been if you'd known this at their age. Right? Don't deprive them of this information. Share it with them, because at the end of the day, we all want what's best for them. And what's best for them is to expedite their growth so that they can surpass us. That's my goal. I want to see my kids pass me. That's it. I want to be able to see that before I pass. Okay. So listen, greatly appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. As always, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. And then, like Craig said on Friday, come back. We'll see you guys next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Coaches Corner.